Hello, how are you? Good. How's everybody? Good. Okay, thank you so much for coming. Did everybody have a lovely World Book Day? Yes. Are you not asleep? No. Did everybody have a lovely World Book Day? Yes. That is more like it. Okay, welcome to the biggest book show on earth. It is lovely to see you. Today we're joined by some of the most popular authors in the world, and they're here to talk about books and stories, reading them, writing them, and creating them. This is a special event to celebrate World Book Day, and each author has promised to entertain you. Now, I'm quite an excitable person anyway. My name's Laura Dockrell, by the way. It's lovely to meet you. But I'm more than excited because last week, my second book came out, Hi So Much, and soon it might be on this screen so you can see it, but it's quite a nice, intimate room here, so you might be able to see it in my hands anyway. The yellow one there is the second one. And it's really exciting when you meet your book for the first time. It's like that bit in Jeremy Kyle when long-lost friends or relatives are reunited. So I thought I might read a little bit because you'll be the first kids ever in Wales to hear from it. Is that cool? Yeah, is anybody in the room about sort of 10, 11, that kind of age? Put your hands up. Ideal. So you're the same age as my main character, Darcy. So she's about to start secondary school. Anybody here feeling a bit anxious about starting secondary school? A bit nervous, be honest? I was. Okay, great. And you don't want to feel like a small fish in a big pond, or maybe any kind of fish in any kind of pond at all, because you're a human being, you don't really want to be in a pond. I'm going to read a little bit about that now, about Darcy starting school. On the first day of the rest of my life, big school, it wouldn't be too much to ask to expect a boily egg and soldiers now, would it? But obviously Mum has had her head in the clouds because I'm having to eat a breakfast of muesli, hamster bedding, that gets swallowed in huge lumps that don't settle in my tummy in no way whatsoever. I cut my gum whilst I brush my teeth and keep looking at myself in the mirror 1 trillion times and not feeling one bit like me. I feel like a fraud, like an actor. I feel small and old at the same time, like an ancient chihuahua. We drive past my old school on the way to my new one. Poppy and Hector, my younger brother and sister, get out of the car, running towards the tiny familiar gate. I draw an invisible star on the car window with my finger and say goodbye. When we reach the driveway of my new school, I am met by absolute ridiculous madness. Everybody seems so growed up. It's like walking into a nightclub. Nobody has on these long sleeves or hippie long skirts or donkey bench shoes that I have on. Nobody has frilly socks on either, or rucksacks like they're getting ready to leave the country. Everybody seems to know each other. I try to look as though I'm not looking for my best mate Will or Caroline from the magical land of China, who is also coming to this school. I'd even like to see Hateful Clementine. At least she is familiar. It feels like that bit in the Penguin Nature programme when all the mum penguins come home from food catching and come to meet their husbands and eggs, and it's complete major chaos, all beaks and wings. Will, my best mate, is the most frightened I've ever seen him. I want to hold his hand, but I just don't know if that is allowed at big school anymore. The building is even more greyer and boringer when we get up close. The kids are even bigger and the feeling is even more scary. You can recognise all the new ones like us from miles away. We're all the ones that are too small, waiting to get stepped on like ants. What if people hate us? Will suddenly says to me. He's not allowed to be doing this fear business. He's supposed to be the brave one, the one that knows what's going on, but he does have a point. What if people hate us? What will we do then? How do we make sure we look cool all the time? What if we get tied up to the front gate and get force-fed dog poo and nits? What if we get stapled to the notice board? What if we get made deaded? I grab Will firmly by the wrist and bring him round to face me. He panics, as if I'm about to snog him or punch him, but either I do not, neither, as I'm obviously not a maniac. William Hopper, we can do this, because when it comes to being human beings, we are the very best. We are superheroes at being human beings, and nothing is going to bring us down or ruin our chances at making this school work for us, because, well, this school needs us far more than we need it. In fact, this school is begging for cool kids like us to come and electrify its corridors and classrooms. So what you saying, bruv? Get your bag on, straighten up that tie, do up your flies, and come on. I really was quite fired up, and I feel so strong and powerful and brilliant and relieved, exactly like if I was a Prime Ministeress for my actual even paid job. There's a moment's silence, and that is when everybody begins to laugh. I've not only given this speech to Will, I've given it to the whole entire playground. I melt. I'm a puddle. Will reaches round in the awkwardness and slowly does up his flies. The zipping sound pierces the air like a horn on a clown's bicycle, and the dreaded one and only Clementine claps her hands slowly in mocking meanness. What a wicked way to start secondary school, I think. Well done, Darcy. Well done. Thank you. Thanks. Thank you. So we've got, oh, thanks for the woo-woo. You made me feel like Beyonce, babes. Okay, I did promise that we've got loads of amazing guests here today, so I'm going to introduce our first guest. When we first got the lineup for these brilliant events, we asked everybody to give us 3 strange, unusual facts about them that maybe nobody else would know. So mine was, I'll give you one of mine, was that when I was a baby, I ate super glue. Unfortunately, that didn't work, blah, 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 blah. But Dan's facts, Dan Anthony. Okay, here are his 3 facts. He always wanted to be a bass guitarist / dancer. He learned a lot about writing by drafting terribly dull legal decisions for the European Union. And his favourite word is sarsaparilla. Want to have a go at saying that? Sarsaparilla. Pretty good. Can you please give a lovely, warm welcome to Dan Anthony.
Hi, Laura.
Hello.
How are you? Thank you very much. Oh. Hello, everybody. Can I say what a pleasure it is to be here, and what a pleasure it is to see so many people here. Whew. There's one thing I noticed before you all arrived, one strange fact. I grew up in Cardiff, okay? Can anybody guess what junior school I went to? Anybody over there know what junior school I went to? Anybody over there? Yeah? Roath Park. Is your school Roath Park? I thought it was great when I was there. And when I was there, I really loved writing stories. I've been writing stories ever since I was your age in Roath Park Junior School. And in the end, I got to write scripts, because scripts have got less words in them than stories, and they just have dialogue. After a while, I thought, you know what I'd really like to do? Get back to writing the stories that I was doing when I was in Roath Park Junior School. So a couple of years ago, I thought, I'm going to have a go at this. And I wrote a set of stories about the rugby zombies. Can anybody guess what those stories were about? Yeah? Rugby and zombies. And I did 3 of them. And they were set in Wales's most scary village, a little place called Aberyscary. And they followed what happened to a boy called Arwel, who couldn't play rugby and was terribly scared of zombies, but ended up having to play rugby and hang around with zombies. And I finished those stories. And the nice thing about stories is after a while, if you get fed up with a story, you should stop writing it. And I wasn't fed up with Arwel in Aberyscary. I wanted to do a new story. And my new story is called Steve's Dreams. Now, I don't know how you feel in all the junior schools that are here, and certainly in Roath Park, but when I used to give a story in for the teacher to look at, I used to feel very nervous, because I never knew what the teacher would do. Well, today, I feel very nervous, because I'm going to read the beginning of Steve's Dreams, and this story is so new, it hasn't even come out as a book. In fact, there's someone around, somewhere in Cardiff, printing them probably at the moment. So this is the world premiere of a story called Steve's Dreams. And I thought I'd read it to you, see what you think of it. So you can imagine, I'm feeling just a little bit trepidatious or scared at the moment. A little bit like my character, Steve. This is what Steve says. Life is really dangerous. By the way, Steve doesn't come from Cardiff, but I got a Cardiff accent. Steve comes from near Newport, so you'll have to forgive my way of doing Steve's voice. They don't tell you in school, and they try not to mention it at home. It's like it's a secret grown-ups think children can't cope with. Everyone tells me that I worry too much, but I think maybe they're the ones who are pretending. Life is too scary for grown-ups. I remember the package arriving. It was made of brown cardboard, half envelope, half box, the sort of thing they use when you buy stuff online. But this was from the library. I know that because on the outside, in big black letters, it said, from the library. I know it was for me because it said, for Steve. When Mum showed it to me, she raised one eyebrow, as if I owed them money or I'd lost one of their books or something like that. I didn't open it. I knew I hadn't ordered any books. It was a trick. I got a nose for trouble, and that parcel was full of it. I left it on the kitchen table, and nobody said any more about it. It stayed on there for a long time. Sometimes it got covered with other things, magazines, packets of cereal, bottles of nail varnish, sugar, salt, pepper. But every now and again, it would make its way to the top of the pile, as if to say, look at me! Open me! In the holidays, things are pretty chilled in my house. My sisters, Miffany and JD, don't usually get up in the mornings. They're 15. They're twins. They can do whatever they want. It was 9:10 when I walked into the kitchen to get my cereal and feed Groucho. Everybody was there. JD, Miffley, Kyled, my 5-year-old brother, Mum, and on the Skype, Dad. Sorry, said Dad. I'm losing the connect. I saw his face on the screen. Then it flickered and the connection went. Everybody turned on me. Steve, chorused my sisters, you lost Dad. I never did anything, I said. I didn't know we had him in the first place. I thought you were asleep, said Mum. I'm never asleep. Somebody's got to be on the lookout. I pointed at my sisters. They're the ones who sleep all the time. Kyled, my 5-year-old brother, I don't exactly get on with him all right. My sisters are okay. They let me borrow things. But Kyled, this is what he said after Miffany and JD had gone upstairs. He glared at me as he spooned a new bowlful of cereal into his mouth. Steve kept me awake last night, said Kyled. Mum sipped her tea. He kept tossing and turning and screaming out loud, said Kyled. Shut up, Kyled, I said. No, no, all night long, said Kyled. Is this right, said Mum. She rested the palm of her hand on my forehead. I felt foolish. He's talking rubbish, I said, just like he always does. He's a rubbish talker, that Kyled. Kyled licked his bowl, just like Groucho, who, in case you're wondering, is our dog, a small brown Yorkshire Terrier. Screamed all day like a little baby, shouted Kyled, jumping down from the chair at the kitchen table. Wah, wah, wah. Kyled, said Mum, why don't you go out in the garden and play on the trampoline? I'll count the bounces. Kyled went outside. Mum started to count. 1, 2, 3. I wasn't trying to keep Kyled awake, I said. It was just a dream. Steve, why don't you go outside too? Try and enjoy yourself. Stop worrying. Most things turn out all right in the end. 11, 12, 13. As she counted the bounces, Mum picked up a magazine off the pile of stuff at the end of the table. I saw it again. Those big black letters. From the library, for Steve. The parcel had come back to the surface. I reached out and I touched it. Perhaps today would be the day that I opened it. Mum stood by the kitchen window, half watching Kyled bounce as she flicked through the pages of the magazine. 33, 34, 35. I turned the package over in my hands. It felt explosive. Perhaps, if I opened it, there would be an almighty kaboom! Hello, invasion force, sweeping through Oliphant circles. That was a strong possibility, but there were other people who wanted me out of the picture too. Spies don't like me because I'm always trying to spot them. Alien invaders have to keep clear of my patch of sky because I'm always checking for them. 47, 48, 49. On the other hand, maybe the package was from somebody who needed my help. Why don't you go and play football? Asked Mum as she counted and read the magazine. Mum always said she's really good at multitasking. Go out, Steve, please. We got to go for your appointment at 12. 12? I thought my appointment was at 4:30. Suddenly, my time had been cut by half. That was when I realized I had nothing to lose. If I wanted to find out what was in the package, I needed to look right now. I ripped open the cardboard. Mum turned and watched. She stopped counting. It's about time you opened that, she said. I checked at the library. We haven't ordered anything. As if this was sent by a real librarian, I muttered as I stuck my hand in. I felt something soft. I closed my eyes and pulled it out. Nothing exploded. I opened my eyes. It was a hat. A green baseball hat with library written on it in big yellow letters. I put it onto my head. It fitted perfectly, and it had a peak to keep the solar radiation off. I smiled. Now it was okay to go out the back and play football. Somebody likes you, joked Mum, at the library. Now what happens in that story is a library, a strange library, is trying to get in touch with little Steve, who's a bit of a worrisome guy. And the stories are about how Steve discovers an extraordinary new world in the library of dreams. I can hear the clips of Laura's feet behind me. That story I found in Sainsbury's outside Cwmbran. Stories people think are really difficult to find. I think if you keep your eyes open anywhere you are, even the most ordinary place, you can find the most extraordinary stories. Thank you very much for listening to the story, and enjoy the afternoon.
Thank you so much, Dan. Okay, our next guest. Okay, his 3 facts. David is quite clumsy and often bumps into things. Lampposts are a particular problem. But a few years ago, he fell off the sofa and broke his knee. Adventurous. David once had a summer job cutting grass at a cemetery. And his last fact, this one's really sad. David was once stuck in a lift on Christmas Day for an hour and was finally rescued by the fire brigade. Can we please give a big warm welcome to the amazing David Mellon?
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, everyone. Nice to be here. Now, I appreciate that the books I do mainly are for very young children, and of course, you're a bit older than that. But I thought I'm going to show you a little bit about how I work and do a little bit of drawing for you. And I've been doing a little bit of a tour recently, and I've been going to schools, and I've been showing them a little bit about how I work. Now, this is a corner of my studio. I don't use any computers. I use watercolor paint, color pencil, and inks. I thought what I'd do is show you a quick sequence of photographs to show you how I paint the character. As I say, most of my work is for very young kids, but I've done some work for older children, and the process is exactly the same. So usually, I start with a pencil sketch on cartridge paper. And for those of you that don't know, Hugless is a character, he's a bear that likes to hug, and he hugs anything, and here he's hugging a stone. Why not? So then, when I've done that drawing, I'll trace it onto my watercolor paper, and I use a light box. Do you know what a light box is? Anyone? It is what it says, really. It's a box with a light in it, and it's a bit like holding up a picture against the window, and then you put a blank piece of paper over that picture, and you can see through it. So that's exactly what I do here, and I'm tracing that pencil drawing with pencil again onto the watercolor paper. And then I'll go over the line again with a waterproof ink, black ink, which is waterproof, obviously, so that when I paint it, the line doesn't smudge. Then, so there we are. We have the pencil drawing at the top and the inked finished drawing ready to paint at the bottom on the watercolor paper. The next bit is I'll take one area at a time and I just start painting. So here you can see I'm painting the rock. So what I do is, first of all, I take that area of the rock and I'll just wet it, that whole area carefully with just water. And then I'll put the watercolor into that rock, and you can see it just bleeds across. And while it's still wet, I'll add more colour in different areas and just build up the colour like that. And then when it's about right, I'll use a hairdryer to quickly dry it. And all my neighbours think I'm always drying my hair, because zzz, going on all day long, day after day. So yeah, and once I've done that, I'll just work my way around the different areas. So you can see I've just done the hand and the head. And it's quite a quick process, because I have to work quickly. The area that you can see there is wet first with water, then I'll add the light colour. And while it's still wet, I'll put a slightly darker colour in and just build it up slowly. And then when I've done that, I'll just add the details. A bit more paint, and then finally, finish off the eyes and with a colour pencil, and then you can see some colour flecks there, just to finish it off. And that picture, as you can see, is only about that big, and that took about an hour to do, so it gives you an idea of how I do my pictures. People often ask me, how do you get to become a writer, an illustrator? What made you decide to do that? Well, I've always loved reading, and I've always liked drawing, loved drawing. So for me, I just never stopped. I think some people, they get to sort of mid-teens and they start, they stop after that. But I've always loved doing that. So when I found out you can actually do a job doing that, spending your time actually drawing and painting, it was a fantastic opportunity. So I've been very lucky to be able to do that. And I love stories. And recently I was reading how stories go back in time, even back to cave paintings. People always use pictures to tell stories, and I love that. And I thought it'd be quite nice to I came across something called drawing stories, where you draw as you're telling a story. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to do just that. I'm going to draw a story. So just a bit of magic here, hopefully. Just bring a chair up here. And I'm going to tell you a story and draw while I'm doing it. I think there's a slight delay, so there's a slight stutter, but okay, here we go. So, everyone can see? Does everyone can see? Yeah? Okay, good. Okay, so, and the drawing is a very simple, sort of more like a doodle, if you like, but let's see how we get on. So there's once a rock in the middle of the desert. And it's a really large rock and a very flat desert. And no one knows how it got there, but that's the way it is. And it was such a hot, dry desert that even the rock used to have cracks. It was so old, so dried out. And in those cracks, the hot desert wind would blow bits of seeds. And bushes and trees used to grow out of those out of those cracks. But really, it was so hot that these trees didn't last long, and the leaves fell off and they died, and all that was left are these scratchy old black skeleton trees. The animals that lived in the shade here, underneath beside the rock, used to come out, hop along up the side of the rock into the trees, and they used to sit in the branches there when it wasn't too hot. And they liked to do that because they were very, very nervous about what they heard was a doo-doo bird, which was a type of creature that no one had ever seen, but they'd heard that this bird would eat anything it came across, so they were very, very nervous. And they felt that by having this rock, they could climb up and look around, they could see if this bird was coming, so they could run and hide. Well, one day, there was a very, very black cloud, and very unusual, and it started to rain. And it rained and it rained, and it rained so much that the land flooded. And the desert turned into a lake. And the terrible thing for these poor animals was that this stone became an island. So they had to escape from the floods by running up the side here and jumping into the tree. Well, they were really nervous now because they had the worry of this doo-doo bird. If this doo-doo bird came along now, they were really in trouble. They didn't know what to do, so they were very, very nervous. But there's nothing they could do. They just had to wait for the sun to come up and to dry out the water and eventually the desert to come back. Well, as you can imagine, when in the floods, often things drift by, don't they? Old bits of branches, trees, leaves floating by. Well, after a day or two, this rather strange, kind of like a boat-type bit of wood came past. And behind it, which the animals didn't see, were the eyes of a water goblin. So this thing was drifting by. The animals didn't see it, but the goblin saw these animals, and he thought, I'm going to have a little snack. But water goblins don't like light at all, so he decided to wait for it to be dark, and he'd slip underwater, go up to the rock, and climb up and get them. So he waited till night time, and sure enough, he swam underwater so they didn't see him, till he got to the rock, and then he started to climb. And a water goblin's hands are a bit like octopus tentacles. They've got all these kind of suckers on. And you'd think he'd be good at climbing, but he wasn't. He kept slipping, so it took him a long time, slowly but surely. But he got closer and closer. And then suddenly the moon came out just as he got very close. As I say, goblins don't like light at all. So the moon, it cast its shadow on his terrible, sharp, jaggy body. And the terrible, sharp, jaggy shadow was cast on the side of the rock. And as soon as the shadow touched the water, it dribbled into the lake like black ink. And as it dribbled along, it started fizzing and bubbling and hissing. Well, as you can imagine, as soon as the light hit the goblin let a terrible, terrible scream, and the animals thought, it's the doo-doo bird. Oh no, it's the doo-doo bird. We're in for it now. But they couldn't see anything. They just heard the terrible scream, because it's still dark, of course. Well, just at that moment, they were trembling and terrified, and even the rock trembled. But just at that moment, the sun came out, and they just saw, as it got lighter, that it was, in fact, just a goblin swimming in the water, and it was muttering, and it swam away. So they thought, oh, thank goodness me, it isn't the doo-doo bird, it's just a goblin. Well, they didn't know what it was, because they'd never seen one before, being in the desert. But they were relieved, at least it wasn't the doo-doo bird. And they kept looking around, and they couldn't see it. And they felt the heat of the sun coming up, and they knew it wouldn't be long before the lakes would disappear, and then they could go back home. But they were still worried about the doo-doo bird. So they were very, very relieved. But the one thing that was strange is that the rock still wobbled, and they couldn't work out why it was still wobbling ever since the goblin had screamed. It wobbled once. It couldn't be the doo-doo bird. They thought maybe it's the doo-doo bird banging its long, big feet and wobbling the earth because the ground was flooded. And then suddenly, it started to tilt. And they couldn't work out. It couldn't be the goblin. They couldn't see anything. Why? Well, why was the rock tilting? And sometimes, that feeling when the more you look, you can't see something? Even if it's right under your nose.
How amazing was that? Thank you so much, David. Okay, our next guest. It's amazing. Okay, Daniel Morden. So Daniel has travelled the world telling his stories. He's told stories in the Arctic, in Haiti, in the Caribbean, and in Sydney, Australia. He has won prizes for his books and his storytelling. And when he was a child, he used to ride imaginary horses around the playground, but now he does that for a job. Can we please welcome Daniel Morden to the stage?
Morning. How are you? I am the author of these books, but I'm a bit of a fraud because I didn't make the stories up. The stories are much older than I am. And that's old. The stories are myths and legends and fairy tales. And the story at the top there, Dark Tales from the Woods, that's got 7 stories in. And they're wonderful stories, adventures. Hands up who likes adventures. Hands down. Hands up who likes horror. Hands down. Hands up who likes humor. And me. I love a good laugh, me. There's nothing I like better than a chuckle. Yeah, just like that. I can't tell you a whole story because I don't have time from Dark Tales. But what I will do is I'll tell you the beginning of a story in the hope that you'll get excited by what you hear and that you'll want to read more. And in the great tradition of all storytellers, I'm going to stop the story at a really exciting bit. like on EastEnders. The telly's a storyteller, isn't it? And on EastEnders, you know, there'll be a girl sitting on her own on the lonely bench. You know the lonely bench on EastEnders. She's sitting on her own. And this man walks up to her and says, "Allah, princess." Because that's how they talk on EastEnders. And she says, "Who are ya?" And he says, "I'm your father." Dung, 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 coming up Holby City. Dung, 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 dung. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to tell the story up to a point, and I'm going to stop. And you'll just have to find out what happens next, however you can. That's the best I can do. Now, when these stories were first told, they were told up in North Wales by the Wood family. That's why the book's called Dark Tales from the Woods. They were a Romany family, they were a gypsy family. And they used to tell the stories under the light of the stars and the moon, by a fire. And the storyteller would begin the story by shouting socks, and everyone who's listening had to shout back boots to show how much they wanted to hear the story. So I'm going to shout socks, I want you to shout boots. Will you do that for me? I'm not convinced. Will you do that for me? Yeah! Socks! Boots! Socks! Boots! Socks! Boots! Jack was... Thank you very much. Jack was sitting by the fire one night, under the light of the stars, and when out of the darkness in front of him came a gentleman, his clothes as green as ivy, his eyes as green as jade, his teeth as green as moss, his skin as green as grass. "I heard of you, Jack," said the green man. "I heard you need money, so you and I will play cards. And if you win, you can have anything you want." They played. Jack won. "Speak and I will grant your wish." Jack said, "If I could have anything, I'd have a roof over my head tonight." The green man, Jack turned and looked, and there was a house that appeared as quick as a... The green man said, "You could have had anything. I just offered you a wish. You could have had a bottle of water that brought the dead to life. You could have had a sack of gold that was always full, and what did you do? You wasted your wish on one house." Jack said, "Will you play again?" The green man said, "We'll play. If you win, you get anything you want. If I win, I get anything I want." They played. Guess who won? The green man. "I want you," said the green man. "You have a year to find a castle where I live. If you don't find it, I will hunt you down and I will chop off your head. If you find the castle within the year, then you must be my servant for another year. You must complete every task I give you to perform. And if you fail at any task, you'll never need another hat." Flash a green light, puff of green smoke, the green man was gone. Next morning, Jack set off. He traveled the length and the breadth of Wales searching for the green man's castle. He traveled from Pill to Rhyl, from Sirhowy to Abertawe, from Narberth to Barmouth, from Carmarthen to Carnarvon. Jack battled bandits and bears, wolves and witches. He defeated them all. But at his moment of triumph, he felt no relief because he remembered that strange green man, and his heart began to pound against his ribs. One day, he found himself approaching a low cottage with a flat roof. As he approached, an old woman came out. She said, "It's cold, it's dark, come in." Jack went in. She offered him food, she offered him drink. He tried to eat, he tried to drink, but he couldn't stop staring at her fingernails. She had the longest fingernails you have ever seen. They were also the dirtiest fingernail. Well, I hope you've never seen fingernails longer and dirtier than her fingernails were long and dirty, because her fingernails were so long and so dirty, grass was growing out the ends of her fingers. Not in a good way. That night, Jack slept in front of the fire. Next morning, she offered him breakfast. Jack said, "You've been kind to me. Let me be kind to you. Would you like me to cut your fingernails?" She said, "Thank you, bless you. If I tried to cut my own fingernails, I'd snip off my fingers by mistake." So Jack got a pair of garden shears. She said, oh, bless you. You've been kind to me. Let me be kind to you. Why are you here? So he told her about the green man. She said, I may be able to help you. Follow me. She led him outside. She put a ladder against the wall. They both climbed up onto the roof. She lifted a horn to her lips, and she blew. Now, would you like to hear me blow this horn? You're not easily frightened, are you? Because it's just a horn. And the last thing I'd want to do is frighten you. As soon as she blew, from over the horizon, in every direction, came men and women, a man or a woman from every nation on the earth. They sang, from north, from south, from east, from west, we came to help at your request. Thank you, said the old woman. Tell me, have you ever heard of a green man? Much scratching of heads, much scraping of chins. Though we have come, said the man from Australia, though we have come from all over the earth, never have we heard of a green man. Then go home. So the people went back to their respective nations, and the old lady said, I'm sorry, I thought I could help you, but it seems as though I know who could. My big sister. Take my horse, it knows the way. So Jackie thanked the old lady, scrambled down the ladder, jumped on the horse. So swift was the horse, the breath was out of Jack's body. At the end of the day, he approached a low cottage with a flat roof. As he approached, the door swung open, and out came a woman way older than the other one. She said, that's my sister's horse. If you're her friend, you're my friend, come in. So Jack went in. She offered him food. She offered him drink. He tried to eat. He tried to drink, but he couldn't stop staring at her toenails. She had the longest toenails you have ever seen. There was so much dirt underneath her toenails, daisies and buttercups were growing out the end of their toes. That night, Jack slept in front of the fire. Next morning, she offered him breakfast. Jack said, you've been kind to me. Let me be kind to you. Would you like me to cut your toenails? How long I've waited for someone to say those words, she said. So Jack got a pair of garden shears. You've been kind to me, she said. Let me be kind to you. Why are you here? So he told her about the green man. I may be able to help you. Follow me. She led him outside. She put a ladder against the roof. They both climbed onto the roof. She lifted her to her, and she blew. As soon as she blew, from over the horizon came animals, a male or a female, from every species on the earth. From north, from south, from east, from west, we came to help at your request. From near, from far, from high, from low, we came to help, we heard you. No. Thank you. Tell me, have you ever heard of a green man? Much scratching, much scraping. Then a duck-billed platypus said, though we have come from all over the earth, never have we heard of a green man. Then go home. So all the animals returned to their respective nations, and the old lady said, I'm sorry. I thought I could help you, but it seems as I know who could. My big sister. She's way older than I am. Take my horse, it knows the way. So Jack thanked her. He scrambled down the ladder, jumped on the horse. At the end of the day, he found himself approaching a low cottage with a flat. As he approached, out of the door came an ancient woman. The poor old woman was so old she was bent over like a hoop. She came hobbling out, trailing her hair behind her along the ground. She said, that's my sister's horse, come in. So Jack went in. She offered him food. She offered him drink. He tried to eat. He tried to drink, but he couldn't stop staring at her. There were things in her hair, if you know what I mean. Little scampering things. That night, Jack slept in front of the fire. Next morning, she offered him breakfast, but he could see a nit doing the breaststroke through the porridge. You've been kind to her. Let me be kind to you. Would you like me to wash and cut your hair? So he set to work, a snipping and a clipping. And when he'd finished, she said, you've been kind to her. Let me be kind to you. Why are you? Here. So he told her about the green man. I may be able to help you. Follow me. She made her way up the ladder. Jack went with her. She lifted her horn to her lips, and she... When she blew over the horizon came things with wings. Birds, bats, bugs, from every nation on the earth. From north, from south, from east, from... We came to help, but you're... From near, from far, from high, from... We came to help, we heard you. From hot, from cold, from wet, from dry. We came to help, we had to try. Thank you. Tell me, have you ever heard of a... Much scratching, much scraping, then a seagull said, though we have traveled from all over the earth, never have we heard of a... Then be gone! So all the things with wings beat their... But then Jack saw a golden eagle fly to their feet. And the old lady said, have you ever heard of a green man? And the golden eagle said, I have. I'll tell you where he is. Dung, 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 dung. Coming up, Holby City. Dung, 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 dung. Thank you very much.
Well done. How good was that? Thank you so much, Daniel. Okay, our next guest has 3 facts. She once slept all night in a field of cows so that she could see the sun rise over a castle. Her second fact, her secret ambition is to have a garden full of tortoises roaming free. And her third fact is that she once made an igloo in England. Can we please welcome to the stage, give her a lovely big clap, Angie Sage.
Thank you, everybody. Wow. Now, you've just heard how to tell a story. That was amazing. And I'm going to tell you something a little bit different. I'm going to tell you how I write a story. And that's kind of a different thing. So who has tried to write a story? Yeah, everyone, I reckon. And it's not as easy as you might think. Isn't that so? So I'm going to give you a few little tips on what I do. And first of all, I'm going to show you, these are 7 stories in the Septimus Heap series. And when I began writing Septimus Heap, my first story, my first book was called Magic. And it was the first big story that I had ever written. And I learned a lot writing that. And so I thought I might let you in on a few secrets. And the main thing I discovered is that writing a story is very much like going on a journey. And the thing about a journey, the best journeys, I think, is that, yeah, you know probably where you're starting from, you hope, and you kind of hope you know where you're going. Although I think some of the most exciting journeys are when you're not sure where you're going to end up. And the most exciting journeys of all is you're not quite sure how you're going to get there. And that's a really great way to write a story. No one expects you to know all the bits you're going to go through. Let it happen to you when you're writing. That's the fun of it. So first of all, you've got to choose some people to take on your journey. And right at the beginning, I chose 2 characters. One was called Septimus and one was called Jenna. Now, I didn't know much about them, but I did know more about them than they knew about themselves. And that's the trick when you're writing. You kind of know some secrets about your characters, and maybe you're not going to tell even your characters straight away, and certainly not the people who are going to read your story. So I started off with 2 people who I really liked, and that does help, because everybody knows being stuck on a bus or a train or any kind of journey with people you don't like is no fun. So I would say when you're writing, choose some people you want to spend some time with. So this was Jenna and Septimus, and I did really like them, and I knew their secret, and I decided that by the end of the book, by the end of Magic, I would let them discover their secret. In fact, I was really nice to Jenna, and I let her discover her secret fairly early on, but Septimus had to wait. So first of all, once you've got your main characters, I would suggest you think a little bit about who they are and where they come from. And I knew that mine belonged to a big family, a big magic family, and they were called the Heap family. And I called them the Heaps because they lived in a mess. They lived in just a heap of stuff. And names are fun like that when you're writing. If you can use your names to just give people a little clue about your characters, that always works nicely. So they didn't just have a family, they also had an extraordinary wizard who was looking out for them. And once you've got your kind of center bit of characters, you can start thinking about the system that people live in. And Marcia, this is Marcia Overstrand, and she runs the show. And I really liked Marcia. And what is really great in the story, if you find a character you really like and who makes you laugh. And I don't know why she makes me laugh. I think it's because she thinks she knows everything. But because I'm the writer, I know she doesn't. So that's the fun of writing. You always know that little bit more. And you can add all sorts of people. Now, I like writing about ghosts. This is a ghost. He's called Alpha Mella. And ghosts are brilliant because they can go to places other people can't go. They can do things. They can do stuff like walk through walls and all kinds of things. Yeah, I don't think ghosts necessarily have to be scary. Those scary ghosts are good fun to write. The other thing that I wanted to put in my story, I wanted to have a grandmotherly figure, and this is Aunt Zelda. She's actually a witch, but in a good way. So if you get a kind of group of people, you begin to get your story building, but you don't have to know everything in advance, because I bumped into a very strange creature halfway through Magic, and I didn't even know I was going to meet it. I had my characters in a secret tunnel outside these doors, and the doors were opening, and I thought, oh, I wonder what they're going to find. I thought, this had better be good. And that's what they found. They found a dragon boat. So you can kind of, when you're writing, if you're getting really into it, it actually can be just as exciting for you as the person reading it. And the other thing is where your characters live. And I do love castles, as you might have guessed from having spent the night in a field of cows once to watch the sun rise over a castle. I just think they are wonderful places. And actually, I love castles when there's no one else in them. And this is a wonderful castle you've probably been to. This is Carnarvon Castle. And I love it. I love it because it's big and it's on a river. And it's where I wanted my people, my characters to live. And that's the picture that the artist drew of the castle. That's what we ended up with. And that was really inspired by Carnarvon. So I knew where they lived. I knew where they were starting their journey. And from then on, I could send them off. And I sent them off all over the place, actually. I sent them off to marshes and really creepy places. And all through the books, they traveled to different places. I like going on journeys. Now, what you need for your story, once you've got your characters and you know where they are, you need something to happen to them, okay? So, a good way to make things happen to people is to have a bad guy. Now, bad guys are great. Now, this is Simon Heap, and he didn't start off bad, and I'd let you into a secret. He doesn't end up bad either, but he had a bit of a blip in the middle, and he actually kidnapped his sister in the second book. And this was really fun because this was an unexpected bad guy. But you don't have to have unexpected bad guys. You can have scary bad guys who actually turned out strangely to be good after a while. So you can always ring the surprises. She is just bad. She's a ghost. She's an Ethel Dreader. She is totally bad. And I do like occasionally writing about a totally bad person. They are fun. Ooh, creepy, creepy. You can have supernatural bad as well. This is a thing, and they're good fun to write. But the best fun to write are horrible, big, scary, dark dragons. And I had great fun describing that. And the thing, when you're writing your story, he doesn't have to be the bad guy, you know. You could twist this round, and you could make him your hero. You could say, yeah, but actually, he was really nice underneath and a misunderstood dark dragon, even though, you know, he had 6 eyes and was absolutely scary to look at and went around treading on people. So what? That might have been a mistake. So, you know, you can turn things upside down, back to front when you're writing. And that's the fun of it. You can also have fun with all kinds of weird creatures. What I like doing is mixing up humans and animals. And this is Ephaniah Grebe, and he's half rat, half man. And he's half rat because when he was 14, he kind of fell foul of a witch, and she put a hex on him. And I think a nice idea is for every character you write about, however strange they are, you know why they are as they are. So I thought a lot about Ephaniah and why he was as he was. And that way, I got to really know him, and I ended up really liking Ephaniah. This is half man, or half woman, probably. I think he's a man, actually, because I called him he. He's called Mia, half man, half cat. Now, they go back a long, long way, way back into history, and they run lighthouses. So I knew all about Mia's family as well, and he'd had quite a sad life. And I ended up, again, really liking him. This is a Ginny, and he is called, of course, Jimny. And a Ginny can turn into all kinds of things. Ginnies are brilliant for stories. You can send them off to do whatever you need. I'm writing a really difficult bit at the moment, and I got really stuck until I thought, Jimny. And I got Jimny on the case, and I turned him into a tiger. Problem sorted. So I would recommend always having a Ginny hanging around in a story, especially if it's about magic. You can have fun with creatures. Now, this is a cat. It's a cat in the day, but at night, it's a panther. And I'd quite like one of those. I definitely would. And the other thing you can do with your writing, with your stories, is once you've got going with all your characters, and you've got your bad guys, and you've got your strange guys, and you know where people are going, you've sent them off on their journey, and you're traveling with them, and you're all going along, and I would say you get about 2/3 through a story, and you know something has to happen that's really, really scary. And it can be something quite small. It doesn't have to be huge, but you need to have something in there that changes things. And what I did I think it was in Dark, in book 5, was I had this dark fog descend. And you can mess about with the weather. It's great. It doesn't have to just be thunderstorms, which are very convenient, I have to say. But you can do creepy, creepy fog. You can take sort of inspiration from all around you. And actually, I drove up through creepy fog today, and it was scary. The other thing you can do is think about the things that really scare you. And what scares me is dark, creepy caves. So you can throw them in. You can throw in snowy forests where you could wander for years and never find the way out. So you can add all these things to your story and bring all your characters through all this long, long journey. Oh yes, that's one last creepy thing. This is the House of Forex, where time disappears. I think that's probably the most scary thing ever. But you can send your characters into that, you can get them out, and then you can have a happy ending. Because in the end, everybody wants things to kind of work out. And I think happy endings, where you understand what's been going on, is the best thing about writing a book. So good luck with your stories.
I agree with the happy endings. Okay, it's time for our last guest. This is Justin Somper. Okay, his 3 facts. Possibly his favourite smell of all, and this is including bacon and freshly mown grass, is that of a paperback book. When he first receives copies of his books, the first thing he does is crack them open and take a big sniff. It's the moment that they feel real to him. And this is one of the main reasons why he fears the ultimate conversion to digital, because the Kindle doesn't smell quite the same. His second fact is he generally writes best in the mornings, especially when fueled by sausage rolls. He's told me these sausage rolls are mega, so I believe him. Unfortunately, this habit takes its toll, and after a prolonged spell of writing, he badly needs to go for a run to compensate all the sausage roll eating. And lastly, the idea for his sequence, Allies and Assassins, was given to him in part by an amazing Welsh librarian called Hayes ap Emlyn. He paid tribute to him in the first Allies novel by naming the prince's dog Hayes in his honour. Can we please welcome to the stage the amazing Justin Somper?
Hello. Are you having a good afternoon? Yes. Excellent. Are you ready for a little light violence? Yes. Excellent. Can I have an aye, Captain, on a count of 3? 1, 2, 3. Okay, that was pretty good, but I think we want to concentrate on being a crew and everybody saying it at the same time, and maybe a little bit louder. So let's try again. 1, 2, 3. Aye, Captain! Okay, that was much better, but I think we can take it to another level. And here is a tip that I have honed over many years. If you employ your elbow as you're saying it, you'll say, aye, Captain. You will suddenly sound incrementally far more piratical, but be careful not to bash your elbow into the chair behind you, because that will be an ow, Captain. So, one more time. Are you having a good morning? 1, 2, 3. Aye, Captain! Excellent. Would you like to hear the Vampire Shanty? Aye, Captain! Would you like to hear the Vampire Shanty? Aye, Captain! Excellent. I'll tell you a tale of vampirates, a tale as old as true. Yes, I'll sing you a song of an ancient ship and its mighty, fearsome crew. I'll sing you a song of an ancient ship that sails the ocean's blue, that haunts the ocean's blue. The vampirate ship has tattered sails. They flap like wings in flight. The captain, they say he wears a veil, so as to curtail your fright at his death-pale skin and his lifeless eyes and his teeth as sharp as night. Yes, the captain, they say he wears a veil and his eyes never see the light. So, you better be good, child. Good as gold. As good can be. Or I'll turn you into the vampirates and wave you out to sea. Ooh, hazards. You better be good, child. Good as gold. Because look, can you see? There's a dark ship in the harbour tonight, and there's room in the hold for thee. Plenty of room for thee. Well, if pirates are bad and vampires are worse, I pray that as long as I be, that though I sing kind of vampirates, I never one shall see. Yes, if pirates are danger, let's see if someone's going to react in a more scared way. If pirates are danger, oh, you're tough. If pirates are danger and vampires are death, I'll extend my prayers for thee, that thine eyes never see a vampirate, and they never lay a hand on thee. Ah, gosh, that's not good after sausage rolls. Okay, thank you for that. Yes, I'm Justin Somper, and I am the author of 2 book sequences, Vampirates, and now a new sequence for slightly older readers called Allies and Assassins. There are 6 main novels in the Vampirate sequence, and a World Book Day book. And Allies and Assassins is a little bit newer. The first book was published in paperback last week on World Book Day itself, and I've just finished the second one this very week. So there's just 2 at this point. Now, I suppose the question I'm most asked as an author is, where do you get your ideas from? And so I thought it could be quite fun today to try and answer that question in connection with both my series, Vampirates and Allies and Assassins. Now, when I think back to when I got the idea for Vampirates, the idea came to me in a very particular way. It didn't come to me because I loved vampire movies and TV shows and books, or that I knew an awful lot about pirates. It simply came to me that the word vampirates just dropped into my head one day. It really was like something falling from the sky and hitting me on the head, that idea. And I was very excited when it happened. I felt shivers up my spine, and I knew that I had to go away and do something about it. The problem was, because that is where the idea came from, I actually realized I don't know very much about vampires, and I know even less about pirates, so I was a bit stuck. So I decided that I would research 2 things. I would research, on the one hand, pirate history, and on the other, vampire myth. And I would look at ways that I could weave the 2 of those things together. And as I was doing that research, something quite interesting happened. I assumed, as I say, not knowing much about piracy, that it was probably going to be all about the pirates of the Caribbean, the 18th century, so that piracy was very fixed on a particular time and place. That turned out not to be the case. It turned out that actually you can find pirates everywhere, from ancient Rome to the Vikings in Scandinavia. There are real-life pirates around today, but I thought they were probably a bit too brutal even to work into the story. And the same thing was true when I investigated vampire myth. It's not all about that one castle in Transylvania. There have been vampires in ancient Greece. There have been Scandinavian vampires. And so again, in all times and all places around the world, we seem to be fascinated by the vampire myth. So, having done that research, I realized, excitingly, that actually I can set my story wherever I want to set it and whenever I want to set it. And I decided that I'm going to set it in the future. Why not? Why should I set this story in the past, just because when we usually think about pirates and vampires, we tend to think a few centuries back. I'm going to set this story 5 centuries into the future. So there's been global warming, the sea levels have risen, there's a lot less land and a lot more ocean. And so, of course, it doesn't matter who is in control of the land. What matters is who is ruling the oceans. And that is the pirates, a particular organization called the Pirate Federation, which has carved up the sea into sea lanes, which they've given to different captains. And, of course, the vampirates, too. Now, the heroes of my Vampirates books are twins. They're 14 years old. They're called Connor and Grace Tempest. And they live in a lighthouse on the east coast of Australia. At the beginning of the book, they get shipwrecked. So Grace and Connor are flailing around in the water, and they almost die. But they're rescued just at the last minute. They've been separated, so they're going to be rescued by different boats. Connor is rescued by a passing pirate ship. It's called the Diablo. It's one of the more notorious pirate ships in the region. And Grace is rescued by another more mysterious ship with tattered sails that flap like wings in flight. So I think we could work out what's happened to her. So that's the beginnings of the Vampirates story. Now, that initial research that I did when I was finding out about famous pirates of old was incredibly useful in terms of developing characters within the books. But that's a story for another day. Although if you want to know more about the characters in the Vampirates books, you could check out my website, vampirates.co.uk. Now, when it came to Allies and Assassins, I'm in the unusual position of knowing the exact day when I got the idea for this book. It was October the 9th, 2009, and I was in Wales, in Wrexham, to be exact. And I was there doing book events, much like today, although this was for Children's Book Week. And as Laura mentioned, the person looking after me that day was a very inspirational Welsh librarian called Hayes ap Emlyn. And we got talking, and I found out a little bit about him. And it turned out that he was an expert in horses. And he gave me some advice for the Vampirates book that I was working on at that point, which had a horse scene in it. And so I was able to use what he told me in that story. But then he started telling me a little bit about his family and about his daughter, who that day was taking part in an Eisteddfod to win the poet's chair. And the minute he mentioned that phrase, the poet's chair, to me, I got really quite excited. It was very similar to when the word vampirates just came into my head. I knew that there was the potential for a story in this. And what Hayes went on to tell me is that that phrase harked back to Wales in the pre-medieval times, when there were clans of different tribes, each ruled by a prince. And that each prince would have his key officers, and each of these officers would have a designated chair or position within the prince's court. I loved the idea of a poet, a writer, occupying such a powerful position in court, because I always like it when people acknowledge that writers are powerful people. So over lunch that day, I was already formulating my idea for what the story was going to be. It was going to involve a prince, a court, and a murder, but I had to put that on hold, of course, because I had an afternoon event to do. Now, as Hayes drove me back to the station that afternoon, he started telling me more about these pre-medieval courts, and I was scribbling stuff down even as we were driving. And then when I got back to London, he started emailing through some bits and pieces that he thought might be of interest, and they certainly were. And it became clear to both of us that I needed to get hold of a particular book. And I have this book here. It's called The Law by Hywel Dda. Now, they say never judge a book by its cover. This doesn't have the most exciting cover in the world, it's true. But I can assure you its contents is quite exciting. And I shall just read you a very brief extract, and I think you'll see what I mean. In the Middle Ages, Wales was not a single country under one ruler, but a collection of countries whose pattern was always changing. The ruler of each country was in theory an independent sovereign, no matter how small his country might be, but the chances of inheritance and marriage, of battle and murder, and of sudden death meant that from time to time a ruler would build up a bigger kingdom, which would break up again when he died. So, as I read that, I was thinking, a collection of countries whose pattern is always shifting, inheritance, marriage, battle, murder, sudden death, yes, I think that could be the elements of an exciting story. Now, I suppose one of the things, having written 7 vampire stories, that I learnt about myself as a writer is that I love writing characters. It's probably one of the things I like best about the writing process. I think there are over 100 named characters in the 7 Vampirates novels. So I knew going into Allies and Assassins that I wanted some really, really strong characters. And I went back to that yellow book there because it lists out for me, in pre-medieval Wales, these are the people who reported to the prince. Many of them had such evocative names: the chief falconer, the huntsman, the groom, the physician. Already I have 4 key characters, and that's not counting the prince. In fact, once I counted up the prince's officers and those of the queen as well, I realized that there were going to be too many characters in the story. So I decided that I would give the prince 12 officers, most of whose titles came from that book. But I couldn't resist tinkering around a little bit, so I've also added in a beekeeper, I've added in the woodsman, and I've added in an executioner, because people are going to die. My research also gave me the name, the princedom, where the story was going to be set, and that's Archenfeld. But although this book was very strongly inspired by a particular place and time, I decided that, like Vampirates, I was going to relocate it so that it happens in a parallel world and a parallel time. And the reason I did that is because I want this sense of a defined, concrete world, but one where anything might shift at a moment's notice. I suppose a final key question for me to think about when I'm creating stories is, who are the main characters going to be? And I knew that in this story, I wanted a boy and a girl at the centre of the action, as I had in Vampirates. I decided that, again, they would be the same age as each other. So they're 16 years old. The twins in Vampirates are 14. But Jared Wynyard and Asta Peck, who are the two lead characters in Allies and Assassins, they might be 16, but they come from very different backgrounds. At 16, Jared is a prince. He's actually the heir, or edling, another word that came from this book, to the throne of Archenfeld. And when his older brother, Prince Anders, is assassinated, Jared becomes prince overnight. And as prince, he has to make safe the princedom. He has to solve his brother's murder, and he has to adjust to being in power. But he finds that there are very few people in court that he can trust, even on his Council of 12. But someone that he can trust is Asta Peck. Asta isn't a member of the royal family. She isn't even a member of the 12. She's a relative newcomer to court, and she's come from the outer-lying settlements. Her uncle, Elias, is the physician. So he's a member of the 12, and because he's the physician, although she is only 16, she knows rather a lot about wounds and poison and dead bodies, because she's seen quite a few of them. And she decides that she's going to solve the prince's murder herself. So that puts Asta and Jared on a collision course towards each other. A new friendship and a new story begins. I'm out of time, so I can't tell you about my research exploring Welsh castles or going out with a real-life falconer and seeing how that all works. But again, if you go to the Allies and Assassins website, you'll find stuff there. I hope that I've been able to answer that question, or start answering that question, where do ideas come from, and also show you a bit of what happens with the journey that you take once you get an idea. I'm going to finish with a quote from the American inventor Thomas Edison, who said, "Genius is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration." Now, I am by no means a genius, but I can assure you that in all my books, there is a lot of perspiration or sweat, and there's quite a lot of blood and tears as well. But I hope if you go on to read them, you're going to enjoy them. Thank you for being a brilliant audience today, and belated Happy World Book Day.
Thank you so much, Justin. Can we please welcome all our authors and illustrators back onto the stage, please, for one final goodbye? Wherever they are. Yes, thank you very much. There they are. Great. If you, yeah, lovely, good. Thank you. If you want more hints and tips on how writers write and how you can create more exciting stories, try out Storycraft at www.worldbookday.com. And remember, you will have been given a £1 book token by your school, so please make sure you take it to your local bookshop where you can swap it to get one of the World Book Day books for free, or you can use it to get £1 off a full-price book or audio book. It has been amazing to meet you all. Thank you for being the best audience ever. Give yourselves a lovely big clap. Thank you so much. Thank you.